A very good morning to you and welcome to the Power Breakfast News. I am Kiriko Ngarwam. The government has yielded to pressure and withdrawn the controversial proposed religious regulations that would have radically changed the way churches and other faith-based organizations operate. Following a meeting with religious leaders here in Nairobi, President Uhuru Kenyatta agreed to shelve the regulations pending consultations on the matter that saw churches accuse the government of infringing on the freedom of worship. Francis Gashuri has details of that in the following report.
The Religious Society rules published by the Attorney General's office early this month had ignited a contest pitting the government against religious leaders who felt targeted by the proposed regulations. But those regulations have been withdrawn. Following a meeting between President Uhuru Kenyatta and the religious leaders, the government was forced to retreat after the men and women of cloth threatened to mobilize their supporters to vote against the Jubilee administration in next year's general election, accusing the government of violating the freedom of worship enshrined in the Constitution. The regulations were specifically meant to streamline the operations of religious organizations and weed out fake preachers who are minting millions of shillings by commercializing matters of faith. The regulations required all religious organizations to seek fresh registration from the Registrar of Societies and comply with all inspection requirements. The Attorney General had also required all preachers to be graduates of recognized theological colleges and have certificates of good conduct obtained from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. These regulations would have locked out some flamboyant televangelists who have time and again been caught on the wrong side of the law. The regulations further required all foreign preachers to obtain work permits from the Immigration Department before being allowed to minister in the country. Foreign religious organizations would not have operated in the country without a clearance certificate from the Kenyan embassies in the home countries of the religious organizations for ease in tracing their origins and doctrines. To curb mushrooming of religious organizations, the rules required all centers of worship to submit their constitutions and file annual membership returns, including their tax compliance documents and details of all top leaders of the organizations to establish their relationship. Francis Gashuri, Public First News.
African countries have adopted a resolution to withdraw from the Rome Statute that establishes the International Criminal Court. The AU Executive Council rubber-stamped a report highlighting Africa's misgivings with the court during a meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And as Sylvia Chebet reports, Africa's leaders are expected to adopt the document during a heads of state meeting to be attended by President Uhuru Kenyatta over the weekend.
This Saturday, Africa's leaders converge again at the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa to make a statement on its relationship with the Hague-based court. They will adopt the report recommending a collective withdrawal of their nations from the Rome Statute that establishes the ICC.
Africa feels left out, Africa feels not listened to, Africa feels not responded to. And also Africa feels that even this time round, the only reason that we were able to make the progress that we made was because we had an African president of the Assembly of State Parties who understood the African terrain.
The decision by the trial court to apply Rule 68 that allows use of recanted testimony in the case against Deputy President William Ruto and journalist Joshua Sang aggravated the situation. Africa had agreed to the clause during the Assembly of States Parties on the assumption that it would only be applied in future cases, not on an ongoing case like that one against Ruto and Sang.
It cannot be true that as soon as we completed the Assembly of State Parties, the first thing that the court said about the decisions that had been taken there, right? The first thing that they said was that those decisions were irrelevant to the workings of the court, which basically means that the Assembly of State Parties is totally and completely useless.
It was against the basic principles of law and the rule of natural justice, they say.
If the Assembly has no bearing on what happens in the court, the same Assembly that actually created the court, right? If that's the truth, then we should scrap it. Then there's no point in wasting resources and time sitting in a body that has absolutely no bearing on anything. Because if it has no bearing on the court, on what else does it have a bearing?
Africa has not shied from stating that the court is skewed against the continent, only chasing after African leaders, and that it has been acting on the behest of Western interests. President Omar al-Bashir has been a fugitive since the ICC issued a warrant of arrest against him in March 2009 on counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
In their face, believe it or not, we are nobody. This is not about President Bashir. This is not about Vice President Ruto. This is about us.
Because there are cases about Iraq against Bush and Tony Blair. They are not new cases, and we have not seen anything.
However, each state withdraws individually. In that case, Kenya will need to pass a bill in Parliament to amend the International Crimes Act. Afterwards, as stated in Article 127 of the Rome Statute, a state may write to the UN Secretary General notifying him of the intention to withdraw from the statute. The withdrawal shall take effect 1 year after the date of receipt of the notification. Sylvie Chebet for Power Breakfast News.
Health authorities across the world are alarmed by the outbreak of a mosquito-borne virus that has been blamed for severe birth defects in children. Nearly 4 million people have been infected with the first fast-spreading virus that has now been reported in more than 20 countries, mostly in South America. Kenyan health officials say the virus is found in the coast and northeastern regions, where locals have, however, developed immunity over the years. Esther Kahumbi Makori reports.
It presents like a normal flu. The symptoms include fever, rashes, joint pain, muscle pain and headache. But it is its effect on unborn children that has health experts worldwide worried. The virus has been linked to the birth of children with smaller than usual brains, a condition medically known as microcephaly. According to the World Health Organization, the virus has spread to 23 countries in the past year, with 3 to 4 million infections. More than 4,000 of those have been reported in Brazil, which is the hardest hit by the virus. Named after Zika forest in Uganda, where it was first isolated, the virus is spread by a mosquito known as Aedes. It is found in tropical and subtropical areas around the world. And Kenya is no exception.
These are the same mosquitoes that can transmit other diseases like dengue and yellow fever. So, and those mosquitoes are very widely distributed around the world. And so we can't say that we don't have the mosquitoes here. The mosquitoes are present all over around the world.
According to Dr. Kiambo Njagi of the Malaria Control Unit in the Ministry of Health, Kenyan coast and northeastern areas have for years been known to have the virus, but the population in those areas have since developed immunity against it. The virus is therefore not of major public health concern in the country.
There's no need to panic. There's no cause for alarm. The virus has not been detected in any human cases so far. The only evidence we have is from historical work that was done.
There is no vaccine or known cure for those infected. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the virus can be found in the blood and passed from an infected person to another through mosquito bites during the first week of infection. Investigations are underway to establish whether it can be spread through sexual contact. El Salvador is the country to issue warning to delay pregnancy for 2 years as the virus spreads to more countries. Denmark is the latest European country to report cases of the Zika virus. Pregnant women in those countries remain at high risk, and while health experts here remain confident that Kenya has little to worry about, areas prone to the virus are being monitored closely. Esther Kahombi Makori, Power Breakfast News.
Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i now says the ministry will take stern action against its officials under whose watch poor quality non-formal schools have been coming up. Matiang'i, who spoke while on an impromptu tour of non-formal schools here in Nairobi's Kawangware area, expressed his displeasure with conditions that learners have to endure in some of those institutions. Matiang'i, however, hailed the Bridge International Schools for its informal education initiative as he called for joint efforts to improve the quality of education at its institutions. Samgetoku reports.
The walk to quality education has proven long. informal settlements the most affected. After hearing enough concerns over the Bridge International Academies, most of which operate without registration, the Cabinet Secretary chose to walk the long walk and see for himself conditions there.
How are you?
The unexpected guest was received with mixed feelings by his hosts. This was a fact-finding mission, and the first stop was to meet perhaps the most honest of sources, the children here.
Class 3, now in nursery. Very good.
The management of the Gatina Bridge International School was at pains to explain how children 3 years apart in grade could be sharing a classroom.
So during lunchtime they crowd together like this. They are not eating.
Excuse me, can you be sincere? Is this the way you teach? No.
This is nursery.
A review of the school's staffing put to test the management at pains to defend that they have 5 trained teachers with 3 more untrained, a provision they say is acceptable for non-formal schools. The early childhood school pupils who are forced to take the afternoon nap on the ground are concerned for the Cabinet Secretary. But the Bridge International Schools has defended their institution, saying that at the Gatina Center, 92% of KCPE candidates passed last year's exam, recording an average of 290 marks.
They do a fantastic job, to be very honest and to be very fair to them, because if they didn't have our children in their schools, where would they be?
A visit to a neighboring non-formal school by the name Wamo showed deplorable conditions. 15 boys have to share 7 beds, the youngest 3 share 1. They are homeless and thus are housed at the school.
We're going to come down hard on our ministry officials. We can't have this kind of... You guys have seen this thing. We have been around. Some of the school environments are neither safe nor conducive for learning.
After an afternoon long tour, it was time to retreat to the policy-making office with a better informed outlook as the Cabinet Secretary seeks to iron out creases in the ministry's service delivery.
Reports that former Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru is eyeing a grand entrance into the rough and tumble of politics by vying for the Nairobi governor's seat have stirred excitement and speculation. Although the former devolution Cabinet Secretary is yet to officially declare her interest in the seat, the signs are pointing to a Waiguru candidature in 2017 as she begins a series of consultative weekend meetings in Nairobi. Jackie Mariba puts this story in perspective.
She may have been away from the limelight since her exit from the cabinet late last year,
following my doctor's advice.
But Anne Waiguru is slowly but surely making a comeback in public circles thanks to the interest generated by news that she wants to vie for the Nairobi governor's seat in the 2017 general election. Waiguru is yet to declare publicly she will be gunning for the gubernatorial seat currently held by Dr. Evans Kidero. But the man fired by Governor Kidero this week from the environment docket in the Nairobi County government, Evans Ondieki, has given a strong hint Waiguru will go for the seat. Addressing a meeting in Nairobi yesterday, Ondieki said he will back Waiguru, who insists has all the qualities to replace Kidero.
A woman who has given her, who has come to labor for 8 or 7 hours.
Waiguru has previously steered clear of the topic, only telling Citizen TV that she would consult widely before deciding whether to delve into politics.
I don't know. I mean, who knows the future?
For the first time,
Waiguru has scheduled a series of consultative meetings with opinion leaders, including women groups in Nairobi, starting this coming weekend. This Saturday, she is expected in Embakasi, where Ondieki is said to be eyeing a parliamentary seat. During her stint in cabinet, Waiguru oversaw the rise of the National Youth Service and crisscrossed the country opening projects targeting the youth and women. Her increased visibility and perceived closeness with President Uhuru Kenyatta saw her become a vilified target of the opposition coalition for reforms and democracy, CORD, which claimed her ministry's flagship project was riddled with corruption. And when the pressure became too much to bear after the NYS corruption scandal, she called it a day, insisting she was not corrupt and will always hold her head high.
This issue mutated, and that's what I said in my resignation. Mutated from a fight against corruption to a personal attack on me.
She appears to be targeting the Jubilee Alliance support base in Nairobi, given that Ferdinand Waitito, who was the representative of the president's party in the last election, has shifted his political base to Kiambu County. Evans Ondieka's support too means that Waiguru will also be targeting voters from the Abagusi community, who hold a substantial chunk of voters in the capital city. This is because Waiguru's camp has reportedly identified a candidate from that community who was eyeing the gubernatorial seat in 2013 as a potential running mate. Jackie Maribe, Power Breakfast News.
Kenya and Nigeria, which have suffered the brunt of violent extremism and terror attacks in recent months, have committed to forge a stronger partnership in defeating the Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram terror outfits. Fighting terrorism featured strongly during bilateral talks held at State House here in Nairobi yesterday between President Uhuru Kenyatta and his Nigerian counterpart Muhammadu Buhari. Other key issues, including trade, agriculture and education, also featured in the talks. Alex Ubasu has the details.
The visit by the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari to Kenya gave a chance to the two countries that have borne the brunt of violent extremism and terrorist attacks to join hands in combating a problem that threatens to dent the image of the two regional powerhouses. Tackling the threat of terror featured prominently during bilateral talks between President Kenyatta and President Buhari at State House, Nairobi.
Call upon your government to remain steadfast in supporting the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia in its national reconciliation and reconstruction efforts.
To win the war on terror, therefore, we must respond to this phenomenon by developing new and versatile strategies.
Kenya is still reeling from the aftermath of the terrorist attack on the Kenya Defense Forces camp in El Ade, Somalia, while Nigeria yesterday suffered a Boko Haram attack in the northern part of the country, killing 10 Nigerians. The two leaders, however, say the attacks have only strengthened their resolve to destroy the Al-Shabaab and the Boko Haram respectively. The two nations have moved to strengthen their trade ties by forming a special council of business leaders. In addition to agreements signed between Kenya and Nigeria during the state visit by Buhari's predecessor Goodluck Jonathan back in 2013, new agreements on agriculture, tourism and trade have been signed today.
My government is ready to work closely, Your Excellency, with your government to support the private sector by removing any policy or regulatory constraints that might discourage a healthy business environment.
Today we have visas on arrival for general travelers into our countries, as well as visa exemptions for holders of diplomatic passports.
Kenya and Nigeria enjoy a cordial relationship, with Nigeria having a footprint in the country's financial sector, where 3 Nigerian-owned banks are operating. Alex Kubasu, Power Breakfast News.
The High Court in Nairobi has sentenced a woman and 3 of her relatives to death for stabbing her co-wife's 18-month-old daughter. The woman, whose co-wife was initially her house help, said jealousy drove her to plot the murder of the baby. Evelyn Wamboi has the details.
Elena Nyambura is in the dock for a crime she is accused of committing back in 2009. Her accuser, seated across in the courtroom, was her former house help back then in Nairobi's Kariobangi estate, before Elena's husband took her in as his second wife. Elena, charged for conspiring with these 3 others to, on the 2nd of August 2009, kill her now co-wife's 18-month-old daughter by stabbing her 11 times. Justice Fredo Ching heard how Elena confessed that the husband loved the other wife's child more than he did hers, and how anger drove her to commit the heinous act. He also heard how, after 7 years, Elena had changed her ways and was deeply remorseful for the act. Elena and her 3 accomplices were all sentenced to death for the murder of the 18-month-old baby girl. Evelyn Omboy, Power Breakfast News.
Kenya is seeking to convince Nigeria to relax its ban on imports of various agricultural products ranging from poultry products to fruit juices. This emerged during a meeting in Nairobi that brought together Kenyan and Nigerian business people nearly 3 years since Kenya and Nigeria agreed to boost bilateral trade. Bella Genga reports.
It's been 3 years since the Kenyan and Nigerian governments signed agreements to boost trade between the two African economic giants. The deal signed in August 2013 included an agreement to set up the Kenya-Nigeria Agribusiness Council that would allow Kenyan tea and agricultural products direct access to Nigeria's market of over 170 million people. But since then, not much has materialized from the trade deals, a situation that has stagnated trade between the two nations.
Specifically, Your Excellency, we have a challenge of one of our listed companies, Scan Group, in Nigeria, as well as a leading Nigerian company called Icon Prints, that is having challenges in Kenya.
Adding to the apparent stalemate is Nigeria's ban on the importation of at least 25 items, including poultry products, beef, processed vegetable oil, water and fruit juices, as well as bagged cement.
Although I use the line of Uhuru, I doubt if it is yet for prospective business people.
It also takes 90 days to transport a container from Lagos in Nigeria to Kenya, while it takes just 30 days to ship goods from China to Kenya.
Instead of us focusing our energy on ban list, why don't you look at providing some bilateral agreement between the two countries to create some kind of duty-free zone between these two countries, whereby goods manufactured in Nigeria come in to Kenya duty-free.
That's, however, expected to change with the establishment of a joint business council by the two countries.
I believe this continent has the capacity to be one of the greatest economies in this world if only we could remove the artificial barriers.
Nigeria was infected by the so-called Test disease in quote.
Nigeria, a net oil importer, is looking to diversify its oil-dependent economy by trading with Kenya, which offers a foothold into 585 million people-strong COMESA trade bloc. Kenya, on the other hand, is looking for a larger market in Nigeria, which is West Africa's biggest country by population and Africa's largest economy.
The National Public Lighting Project is fully funded by the Kenyan government. That is the word from Energy Cabinet Secretary Charles Katera a day after court leader Raila Odinga said that the project is a World Bank funded project. Dennis Otieno sheds more light on this story.
A fortnight ago, President Uhuru Kenyatta launched the National Public Lighting Project, dubbed Mwangaza Mitaani in Mombasa. But even as the project continues in Mombasa, queries have surfaced as to who is financing the project.
Taa inatengenezwa hapa Mombasa, stima imeletwa na pesa kutoka kwa World Bank. Alafu Uhuru anakuja anasema nazindua.
But the Ministry of Energy has emerged to set the record straight on the project.
There is no single donor involved. All the money is funded through from the exchequers.
Katera says that the national government is funding the project to the tune of 7 billion shillings to light up 52 towns countrywide by January next year.
Now this year is when we have increased to cover the whole other cities. The budget, the balance of that will come from this year's budget.
By May this year, Kiambu, Bomet, Eldoret, Kakamega and Garissa will have been covered. Marsabit, Machakos, Moyale, Meru, Homa Bay and Mandera are on schedule for lighting by December. This as the government prepares to roll out its last mile connectivity project, which seeks to connect 1 million households to power by June this year. In an interview on Citizen Business Center, Kenya Power Chief Executive Officer Dr. Ben Chumo said the project is set to begin in April.
By 10th, we should be receiving over 585 transformers.
Meanwhile, the government maintains that all public primary schools will be connected to power by the end of this month.
Members of the National Hospital Insurance Fund can now access treatment for such chronic illnesses as cancer, diabetes and hypertension using their NHIF card. This follows a review of the NHIF benefits to its contributors. The new packages include a rebate for chemotherapy at 25,000 shillings per session, radiology at 18,000 shillings per session and monthly clinics for 5,000 shillings per month. Members will also access MRI scans for 50,000 shillings per session and CT scans for 8,000 shillings per session. Rebates for maternity and kidney dialysis services will also get a boost, as normal deliveries will be footed at 10,000 shillings and cesarean section deliveries at 30,000 shillings. The NHIF will provide 10,000 shillings for every kidney dialysis session and 500,000 shillings for a kidney transplant, up from the previous rebate of 200,000 shillings. The NHIF has also increased patient cover by between 75% and 233%. This means NHIF will foot at 1,200 shillings per day for those accessing inpatient services at public hospitals and 4,000 shillings per day for those accessing inpatient medical services at private hospitals. Let's now take a look at business stories of the day. And the Kenya Revenue Authority has appointed retired Colonel James Wahome Kariuki as the head of Enforcement and Border Control Unit in the Customs and Border Control Department. Among the key priorities he will be charged with include implementation of a national scanner within the next 18 months. His appointment comes at a time when KRA is revamping its Customs Department to bolster the fight against terror and smuggling. Mombasa, 2 container freight stations associated with a contraband consignment seized recently by KRA and Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission have been closed. The 2 CFS Auto Point and Portside have been ordered not to operate by Kenya Ports Authority and Kenya Revenue Authority, leaving over 500 employees, transporters and clearing agents stranded. Kenya Freight and Warehousing Association Mombasa branch chairman Bernard Simiyu has, however, termed the move as unfair. He says that at least 500 new vehicles destined for Uganda, Sudan and Rwanda are now stuck in the 2 stations. Meanwhile, local carrier Fly 540 has launched a commercial flight from Nairobi to Homa Bay. The launch of the flight, witnessed by opposition leader Raila Odinga, marks the first regular commercial flight to the larger southern Nyanza. Fly 540 is expected to fly to Homa Bay 4 times weekly. Finally, East African Breweries has announced a 16% growth in after-tax profit to 5.5 billion shillings. The result was achieved on the back of a net sales growth of 8% to 37.5 billion shillings. The regional brewer, however, suffered a foreign exchange loss of 908 million shillings following the devaluation of the South Sudanese pound in December. EABL's board of directors has proposed an interim dividend of 2 shillings per share. Alright, let's now have a look at stories making headlines on our website, which is www.citizentv.co.ke. As you can see, you are able to stream live. This is just what has happened a few seconds ago on your TV, so you're able to get up-to-date, maybe the 10-second delay, but up-to-date news. So let's have a look at some of the stories on our website. And woman is sentenced to death for killing co-wife's baby. This is by Evelyn Wamboi. We saw that story earlier. The High Court in Nairobi on Thursday sentenced a woman and 3 of her relatives to death for brutally killing her co-wife's 18-month-old daughter. Now, the woman whose co-wife was initially her house help said jealousy drove her alongside 3 others to commit the heinous act, and the other 4 have been sentenced to life. KRA appoints former military man as border control boss. Right, KRA has appointed Colonel retired James Wahome Kariuki as the Deputy Commissioner and the head of the Enforcement and Border Control in Customs and Border Control Department, and his appointment takes effect on February 1st. And then how to earn millions working for yourself. Right, interesting story. I was once told that our talent is not a decorative piece, it is an inborn gift from God. This is an article telling you that, you know what, go out there, use your talent to make you millions. And there's a picture of Saudi Soul as an example of people who've gone out and used their talents to make millions. So you can read that. And then in business news, NSE signs up 6 banks to clear derivatives. Kenya's Nairobi Securities Exchange has signed up 6 lenders as clearing banks for its yet to be launched derivatives market. And the NSE, an entry point for foreign funds keen to tap robust growth in East African economies, has been planning to start offering derivatives trading since last year. And finally, in sports news, Chelsea face a FIFA ban for fielding ineligible players against Arsenal. This is by Benjamin Wafula. Well, Chelsea are staring at a FIFA ban for fielding an ineligible player against Arsenal. The world's football governing body has launched investigations into the Blues after they reportedly fielded Burkina Faso striker Bertrand Traore in an under-18 match against Arsenal in 2011, yet he had not been registered to feature in the match. So those are some of the stories making headlines on our website. Remember that our digital department is giving out smartphones. What do you need to do? Well, you just need to download this app on your phone, on your tablet, any system that's Android, be it Android or iOS, can work effectively. And what you do then is you share this app, and the more you share this app with your friends and ask them to download, then you stand a chance of winning a smartphone. And we'll be announcing the winners next week Friday, so get downloading and get sharing. Now I hand you over the beautiful ladies of Q to entertain us. We'll be getting to know them about them in a few minutes.